What's up guys, welcome back to another tutorial. In today's tutorial, I'll be showing you all how to go from this to this by following 3 basic steps. To start things off, I have created 3 blank canvases. We're going to go through each step on each individual panel, and then we'll combine it all, and I'll show you guys how to make something that looks very bland, very boring, such as this, and add a lot of detail to it. The first step in this process is to create depth. There's 2 main techniques here. The first one's going to be depth, the next one's going to be texture. We're going to start by adding just depth, and in order to do this, I'm not going to use any blocks that are not oak blocks, just to show that we're not mixing in a lot of different textures. We're going to start by building up some columns and adding a little bit of depth on the corners like so, just making a little framework. Now this already looks a lot better, but we're going to take this a little bit further by building up more of the wall over here and over here, my bad. And this already looks pretty cool, and we're going to put another layer of oak in front of it. Now this is looking a lot better than it did before, but we're going to keep taking it further. We're going to add some more beams running across here. We're going to do that there and here. You could replace this with the regular oak wood. It's totally up to you. We're going to place one right there like that. And then to add even more depth, we are going to add these little extensions, if you will, and that makes it look really, really cool. Now for some more detail bits, we're going to come into these little areas and we're going to place slabs like so on the top half of each block, and we're going to repeat that on this top part as well, and on this right side like so and like that. And already we have something that looks very cool and has a lot more depth than the first. We're going to come into this little nook and add stairs in the corners, create kind of like a round focal piece in the center, and then take our stairs and place them in the middle. And already that looks really cool. We have a lot of detail in there and it looks really nice. We're going to move up here, and this part gets a little bit tricky, but you guys can basically do whatever you want to for this. I'm going to place this like that and like so, then place a slab right here, place an upside down stair up there, go like this, and then place some more slabs like so. It creates a nice little intricate design that when you look at it from a distance looks really cool. For this next part, you're going to have to place blocks down here, and hear me out, we are not going to keep these blocks here. They're temporary blocks because we need to add fence gates all along here like so. And what this creates is when we break these, it creates a little bit of a support for the beams, and it looks pretty cool. It makes it look like these are being supported by we know this is a fence gate, but it looks like it's connected to this piece, and it just looks like an added support. We're going to take some oak buttons and add these in here too, just to break up that texture, and that already looks a lot better. These kind of act like another beam inside of this beam that are supporting it further. But that's pretty much it, guys. We took this blank wall like this, and by adding just a little bit more depth, we created something that looks very cool and very intricate. This next section, we're gonna work solely on texture. Now this is important because if you don't have room to come out of your wall like that, and all you have is this much space, you can still add a lot of texture and depth, but keep it within that space. To do this, we're going to introduce some different types of blocks. We're going to get rid of these bottom blocks and replace them with stone bricks. This creates a little bit of a foundation piece. To make this a little bit more detailed, we're going to put in some cracked stone brick here and there, and we're also going to put in some stairs upside down like this, or upside down like this and right side up like that. And then that creates a little bit of depth, but we're still staying within our original frame. Next, we're going to come in through here, and if you use the stripped oak wood, it looks a lot like this block, like the same color, so you can put it in here randomly, and there's no real technique to this. Just make sure it's random and just go about it however you choose. And if there's a spot that you have left pretty empty, you can go in here and add one, and it looks pretty cool. And already we have a lot more texture, but we're going to take it a bit further, and we are also going to introduce the stripped birch. Now this is totally optional. Again, everything you do is up to you. You don't have to include this if you don't want to. It's totally up to you what you include and what you don't include, because it is your build after all. Now that we have that, we are going to add stairs to it like we did at the bottom. We're going to come in randomly throughout and just add a few stairs. This makes it look more weathered, if you will, and this is totally optional, but it does add a good amount of depth that wouldn't be there otherwise. Now, if you have no room at all to go forward, don't do this next part, but if you can, add some signs here and there. They can be whatever color you want. I'm just going to be using oak just so we stay with the same kind of palette, but if you add these here, it can look really, really cool and adds just a little bit of depth and a little bit of variation when you look at it from the front. Likewise, we can do the same thing with some buttons. We can add some buttons here and there, like so. And again, you can replace these with different colors and, you know, it can look pretty cool. For example, if I were to replace these buttons with the spruce, they stand out more. So if that's something you want to do, go for it. Likewise, if you want to use trapdoors instead of signs, you can do that as well. Or you can keep all of them in there and just sprinkle them in however, but you don't want to overcomplicate it. So choose some blocks to use and some don't. Not every single build has to have every single variation. I'm going to go ahead and switch this back to just using the oak because that's how I wanted this to look. And there we go, guys. We now have the two basic steps. We've got depth and we've got texture. And now all we have to do for the next step is combine them. In order to demonstrate this, I'm going to combine these exactly. We're not going to create a new design. We're just going to go with the first design. So we're going to start by building up these columns again like we did in the first design. We're going to add our support beams coming across here like this, like we did on that design as well. And this is where the fun starts. Instead of using oak, we're going to use spruce right here. And then we're going to do the same thing on the top. And we're going to repeat that on the other side for symmetry purposes. And there we go. That already looks really cool. You can see there's a lot more going on and it just looks a little bit more detailed and it looks really, really cool. Likewise, we're going to use the same spruce stairs in here and repeat that pattern, but now you can see it a lot better. It's more visible and it stands out from the background more. Likewise, we're going to repeat the pattern that we did over there, over here by doing this design once more. And now, like before, like I mentioned down here, it is very, very detailed and it stands out a lot more than it did in this previous version. You can keep it like this if you want, but if you want to add just a little bit more texture, you can come in through here and add these blocks. It creates a little bit more depth and it just makes it look a lot better in my opinion by making the wood look less perfect. You know, this gives it more variation because in real life, you know, there's variation in wood. There's variation in the way it's processed and stuff. And especially if you build medieval type of builds and like weathered type of buildings, this is a very easy and cool technique that you can use to add just a little bit more texture in your builds. We are now going to add some supports on the bottom by using the stone bricks. Because the stone brick is a stone, it feels a little bit stronger than the wood, and by adding it to the structural pieces, it makes the whole wall look more structured. Now to incorporate more stone, we're going to put our buttons in here, but instead of using the wooden buttons like before, we're going to use stone because the stone looks like almost like a metal beam is going through this, adding more support, and the gray complements this gray down here and unifies the piece a little bit more. Like before, we're going to add our doors over here to add just a little bit more detail and more support as well. And you guys could use whatever color you want. If you want to use the spruce, I chose to stick with the oak just because I think it contrasts well and blends in pretty well at the same time. This next part is totally optional and I know some people will not like it, but by replacing some of these logs with the spruce, the stripped spruce wood, you get a little bit more variation here as well. And it is a little bit of a contrast, so it's totally up to you if you include this. You don't have to. Again, this is your build. You can do whatever you want with it, and it's totally personal preference. But there you have it, guys. We have used two basic steps and then combined them to go from blank canvases to a very cool looking wall design. And all three of these look cool, but this one obviously is the most detailed, it takes the most time, and it combines both of the techniques. Now this is cool and all, but you guys might be wondering, how do I apply this to a house? Well, I'll go ahead and show you. To demonstrate how we're going to use these techniques for an actual build, I've made a starter home, a very small, very quaint, very easy to build starter home that you guys can build on your world. Now the first thing we're going to do is add some structure to it. Like I mentioned before, you need structure in your build to make it look like it's supported and to make it look like it actually can stand up on its own. And by adding these corner pieces, it's something very simple you can do, but it's already made the build 10,000 times better. We can go ahead and figure out where we want our door to be and where we want our windows to be. So we'll have windows on every side like that. If we come up to the front, we can see we can have a window up here as well, and we can repeat that on this side right there. Now this looks pretty cool, but this wall looks pretty bland, so I'm actually going to carry this over like so, and that adds a little bit more texture there and a little bit more support as well. We'll go ahead and do that on the back side like so. The next thing we're going to do is add some stairs here and there underneath the windowsills and above them. This adds a little bit more depth to the actual design, and it creates kind of like a framework for the window, which you would see in real life. And there we go, guys. Already we have a pretty cool looking build, but we're going to take it a little bit further. We're going to add some more structure on the bottom by using these stairs. Now you can use whatever stairs you want to. I'm just trying to match the roof, and then you can also use cobblestone walls. You can use whatever you want just to have it look like it's more grounded and supported. Now we're going to use the technique that we talked about in the second panel, and we're going to add just a little bit more texture by doing stuff like so. I'm not going to be including the birch wood, the stripped birch, just because I feel like this is enough to get our point across, and I feel like it'd be overcomplicating the build if I included the birch as well. I think this does a good enough job on its own to do what we want it to do. And there we go. That definitely did what I wanted it to. We add just a little bit more texture and it makes it look just a little bit more detailed and just better overall. This next part gets into more of the nitty-gritty details, but we're going to add a little bit more framework over here using a slab and these trapdoors that adds just a little bit more detail in the front, and you can put something on here, whatever you want, and it can look pretty cool. We're also going to come up over here and add these fences down here. It's just a little bit of an accent piece that you guys can implement into your builds, and it makes it look a little bit nicer. Next thing we're going to do is add in our windows. We're going to just go all the way around. And I would always say to use glass panes because it goes in a bit and it adds more depth. And if you do this window design, it looks like the stair is funneling into the window and the window is pressed up against it, and it looks a lot better than if you were to use just a solid piece of glass. Now that we have that on all of the sides, we are going to add in our door, and by using a spruce door the same way that we did the windows, it looks really cool and it adds its own depth, and also it matches this top part, which we're going to add a little flower like that, and that brings a little bit more color into the design. Color is not something that we specifically talked about when designing a wall, but it is very important to do. It's part of the textural part. You want to add nice accents and some nice colors that stand out a bit more. And by adding these lanterns around there, it not only lights up your build in the night, but it also adds a little bit more color and it serves a purpose and it looks really, really nice. This next part is completely optional. I'm going to add some birch buttons here just to look like some knots in the wood. You guys do not have to do this if you don't want to. Personal preference, I think I'm going to add it. But like I said earlier, you could add the signs on here if you want to, trap doors on here if you want to. You can add some of that stripped spruce wood here if you want to. But what I will say is don't overcomplicate it. Don't try and fit everything on here all the time. If you have multiple houses that look like this one can look like this, but then the next one you can put some of the spruce in, but then not change the way the oak looks. And just use different variations of these techniques to create a nice little house or just a village in general if you want to. This looks a little bit boring to me, so I'm going to get rid of those and do something like so. This adds just a little bit of an awning to it. It makes the window look a little bit more detailed and it looks pretty cute and pretty cool. So we're going to go ahead and do that on this next side. It's a quick little detail that you can do, but it just adds a little bit more character to that side of the house. And I could do a lot more with this roof. It adds some texture up here, but I'm going to leave it just to keep it kind of simple. But remember, you guys can do anything you want to with your own builds. And there we have it, guys, the simple guide to walls in Minecraft. It can be kind of daunting at first looking at a blank canvas, but once you implement these tricks that I told you, it becomes very, very simple and you can make any wall look really, really cool. So with that being said, thank you all so much for watching. If you guys enjoyed this video and you learned something, let me know in the comment section below and by leaving a like on this video. And if you guys want to stay up to date on more tutorial videos like this, please subscribe and join the PandaPack. And with that being said, I'll see you guys in the next video.